DNA, the building block of all living things. It exists inside every cell and allows us to evolve, thrive, and survive. Our genes shape who we are as individuals and as a species. As mankind marches on, so do new techniques in science that are changing the way we think about our very existence.
Evolution is an even less exact science than genetics. Evolution is the random combination of genes from two sources. It is unpredictable and it produces mutations.
Altering the building blocks of life has long been the stuff of science fiction, changing our nature at the most fundamental level to make us stronger, healthier, even better looking. It's the beginning of a controversial journey that could lead to a rise in what many are calling designer babies. Could they form new future generations of enhanced human beings? And should we be playing God? Genes have a profound effect on our health.
I think that what makes Americans nervous about CRISPR and about gene editing
for humans, right?
For humans, yeah. But I also think, one of the concerns is because it is a very religious country, CRISPR allows humans, it puts so much power into our hands. It allows us to shape our world in ways never before imagined. And there are many people in the U.S. who think, well, that's not for us to do. That's for a higher power. That's for God. So the idea that we could be playing the role of God makes a lot of people nervous.
Okay.
Well, a revolutionary treatment tonight at UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital in the East Bay. For the first time ever, doctors have edited a gene inside a patient's body. It's very exciting stuff.
Genes determine our health, our looks, the way we work. They are the ingredients for life. And the idea that we could one day change them is, in one sense, an exciting prospect, but also an ethical minefield. As science moves closer toward gene editing, the concern is that it could go too far and possibly create a new elite group of enhanced humans.
Researchers say they've made a major breakthrough in gene editing. For the first time, they successfully repaired a genetic mutation in human embryo.
Now, it's a potentially monumental breakthrough in science. Researchers from South Korea and the United States say they've figured out a way to edit DNA in human embryos to remove an inherited heart disorder, and did so without introducing any harmful mutations.
A potentially monumental breakthrough in genetic science by Korean and U.S. researchers. For the first time, scientists have successfully removed from a human embryo a piece of DNA that passes down heart disease. Park Ji-won explains.
Bring in NBC medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar. Natalie, good morning.
Good morning, guys.
There are questions, of course, about ethics and things like that. But in your expert opinion, let's talk positives.
Right.
What are some of the positives this brings about?
Well, Hoda, I think we do have to separate the science, the dramatic science breakthrough, compared to the ethical. We're talking about, imagine when women are pregnant and they undergo, oh my God, I can't think of the word. Yeah, they do IVF, and then you have screening tests, and they detect an abnormality in an embryo, and they don't implant that unhealthy embryo. So this is basically taking it at the earliest stage, the one-cell stage. They are deleting or splicing out the genetic mutation, and essentially what these researchers did in Oregon was create a healthy embryo that then theoretically would be reimplanted in the woman that would be missing that genetic defect that causes this disease.
Way down the road here, but do we have any idea what this might cost if it actually comes to the public?
I mean, think about first of all the cost of IVF. First. So you can imagine that this is going to be an additional cost above that. And then, as we talked about before, the legal and the regulatory hurdles that you'd have to go through, and ethical to have insurance companies pay for it. Honestly, this is years and years away.
But for an insurance company, if we get there, would you rather pay for this process than pay for treating a deadly condition down the line?
That's a very astute point, and you can see that this is while this is a phenomenal scientific breakthrough, it has certainly opened up Pandora's box in terms of all the conversations, ethically and otherwise, that will be happening.
Science takes simple ideas, like the sun will rise tomorrow, and complicates them. How does the sun rise? What thousands of factors perfectly align in order for that to happen day after day? And while the idea of the sun rising is both simple and complex on a macro level, that same duality exists on a micro level as well, within our cells and within our DNA. Our DNA is both quite simple and at the same time incredibly complex. Our bodies are made up of trillions of cells, and within each of those cells, our DNA is divided into approximately 25,000 genes. Those genes are called the genome and code for every facet of our physical being. The human genome can be thought of as a book with thousands and thousands of pages. And the amazing thing is, we now have the ability to make rewrites in that book, to make edits in a sense, to change the human story.
For the first time, a baby has been born using a new 3-person fertility technique. American doctors say the baby boy has the usual DNA from his mother and father, plus an element of genetic code from a donor. Well, the process allows the baby to be free of a condition that his mother carries in her genes, and they say it could help other families with rare genetic conditions. As our medical correspondent Fergus Walsh reports.
A world first in genetics and IVF, carried out by American doctors in Mexico, a country chosen because there are no laws there to prevent it. He's now 5 months old and is said to be healthy. This technique is aimed at preventing often fatal genetic diseases from being passed on. The nucleus of the mother was removed, leaving behind the faulty DNA in these structures known as mitochondria. It was put into a second woman's egg containing only healthy mitochondria. This was fertilized. The embryo had all the key genes from the parents, plus a tiny amount of DNA from the donor, which is now in every one of the baby boy's cells.
It's actually quite a significant moment. It's really the proof of a long process that was initiated in the UK in terms of public and parliamentary debate and a lot of the science, showing that you can apply these technologies and ultimately produce a healthy baby at the end.
3-person IVF is legal in the UK. It's just not been done yet. But this team in Newcastle is close to applying for a licence to use a slightly different technique to that in Mexico.
Those questions in a while, but where do we go from here following this research?
Well, I think a lot more work needs to be done. What they have demonstrated is that it's possible to cut out a piece of faulty DNA and replace it with normal DNA, and in 72% of the embryos they dealt with, actually to repair them so that all the cells in those resultant embryos have been normal and there haven't seemed to be any off-target effects on other areas of the genome as well. So that's a huge advance. But obviously it needs to be, the work needs to be done in much more detail, and there are concerns about the whole process as it is. Dozens of embryos were created and destroyed in this process. Each one of those was an individual human life. And there were also eggs harvested from 12 different women in order to do this research, and that raises questions about the exploitation of vulnerable women. There's still a ban in over 40 countries in the world on germline therapy, which means that any change in an embryo or in sperm or egg could potentially be passed on down the generations, and people are very worried about introducing genetic changes into the population, which it might be very difficult to get rid of at a later stage. But this latest experiment does show that it can be done in principle more accurately. I think the other worry about this is what might happen if this technology were to get into the wrong hands, in the hands of rogue scientists who are not interested in using it to treat very, very sick embryos with fatal diseases, but are actually looking to enhance intelligence or athleticism or to redesign human beings in some other way. So it's potentially also the thin edge of the wedge to design a baby. So there are lots of big questions about about safety and about ethics that we need to look at before we can take this whole process further. So it's a first step with promise, but questions remain.
Researchers at Korea's Institute for Basic Science, America's Oregon Health and Science University, and the Salk Institute have jointly used a technique involving CRISPR-Cas9, a type of gene editing tool to correct a genetic mutation for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. The heart disorder affects 1 in every 500 people and leads to the heart suddenly stopping. Those who have the mutation have a 50-50 chance of passing it on their children. For the study, which was published in the latest issue of the scientific journal Nature, defective sperm were injected into eggs from a healthy woman, and CRISPR-Cas9 was used to correct the genetic flaw. CRISPR-Cas9 works as a pair of molecular scissors that can selectively trim away unwanted parts of the genome and replace them with new stretches of DNA, and the result shows the genetic repair happened at the moment of conception.
A scientist and his team out of Oregon are reportedly the first U.S.-based group to successfully edit the DNA of human embryos.
I know I keep obsessing because it's in the news what they're doing now. They don't show it to you. They just go, yeah, gestating on farms or embryos of humans growing in animals. No, it's beyond that. They take them out. They keep them alive. And notice they go, the only law is you don't put it in a real human woman. And don't worry, these creatures don't have any rights because they're not human and they're not animal. They're in that phantom zone. They're in that fifth dimension of the Twilight Zone. And they're just opening the gates of hell. And I just can't sit here and go along with all the pomps and the stupid Hollywood people and everyone preening and driving their $200,000 cars and getting off on being on TV. I don't even hardly watch when I'm on television. I hate it. I hate this whole culture. I hate the whole thing. It means nothing to me. It's all fake. It's all a facade. And behind it are mad scientists in the Hall of the Mountain King just doing God knows what, super weapons, antimatter bombs, black holes, huge cyclotrons, splicing every plant and animal on the known face of the earth, and it's the most satanic rituals you can imagine. Those are satanic rituals. Detonating hundreds of high-powered hydrogen bombs in the 1960s in the upper atmosphere to see if they could detonate the Earth's atmosphere and blow holes in the Van Allen radiation belt is so satanic. Splicing little babies with fish is satanic. Putting prions and all this garbage in our food is satanic. You think real Satanists go and just sit there and have sex with some hot chick on a black altar? That's how they get the low-level people in. Real Satanism is about murdering this planet, and all you stinking Satanists are nothing but cowards that have tried to join this system. You have no idea what Lucifer's got in store with you. You scum. You're going to be torn limb from limb slowly. You're going to beg. Your deaths are going to be slow. Know that, scum. The gulping humanoids in their tanks, scrabbling at the side with human horror in their eyes.